Ladies and gentlemen, angry, happy, inspired, vigilant Americans all around the country and around the world, we have a new president. We have a new vice president. Much has changed. A lot has stayed the same, but it is a new world. And I wanted to bring you a special dispatch to break it down with a guy who I consider the Oracle. He was a guest on episode 63 of Angry Americans. He's a mentor, he's a friend, he's a veteran, he's a thinker, an activist. He was part of a crew that won the Nobel Peace Prize. And there's nobody that I'd rather talk to in this moment to help us understand where the hell we are than my dear friend, the great and powerful Wayne Smith. How are you, brother?
You talking to me?
I am happy to be talking to you. So, what did you think of the last couple of days, man?
I can only equate the last couple of days to some of the combat I was in Vietnam. I mean, it was really, without the shooting, of course, but the insanity of Americans, elected officials, denying the reality of the American people's will who voted for Joe Biden, to have senators and congressmen deny that reality, and then to stoke the fires of insurrection and treason. It was a week that will live in infamy and a week that will, I think, last into the ages, into history. But the good news is democracy held. Despite the attempt at a coup, democracy held. Despite the storming, the sacking of the Capitol, compromising of security information, the threatening of lives of the vice president and speaker, democracy held. And we witnessed a very moving inauguration yesterday that I must tell you, there were times after the Vietnam War when the Star Spangled Banner played, I didn't stand up for it. I felt our country betrayed us and it dishonored us returning veterans, and I did not honor our nation. Yesterday, in little old Warwick, Rhode Island, as the president was sworn in, I stood for the national anthem. I stood and recited the Pledge of Allegiance, recommitting my vow to defend the Constitution. It was deeply moving. And as I say, we're still in the after stages of combat, so it's hard to be clear, but you and I will be talking about this with Ryder and River when they are young men contemplating their own future. That's how powerful this was.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I think I always feel a sense of pride, but I think many of us have felt conflicted about the symbols of our country because they've been so hijacked under the Trump administration. But my son is still learning the pledge in school, in public school. And he stood next to me yesterday, and I taught him how to put his hand over his heart when the colors came through. And we stood in the living room with his grandmother who had just gotten the vaccine. And we were all riveted and moved and proud because I think the inauguration was such a spectacular display of all the best of what our country's all about. I mean, even more than the inauguration ceremony, I loved the tour around the country where you had, Native American dancers, cloggers in North Carolina, skateboarders, like this beautiful tapestry of America was celebrated and kind of woven back together. But you've been through so much in your life. You've seen so much. And living as a Black man after Vietnam and in activism and working in politics and as the father of a young woman growing up in America, what do you think about the moment that is bigger than these individuals, but Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? What are your thoughts on the magnitude of that?
My thoughts are enormous pride. Again, pride in the American people. This is bigger than African Americans. This is bigger than Native Americans or white Americans. This is bigger than Democrats and Republicans. This is the very essence of the grand experiment of democracy. Can we be a nation of law? And when laws are violated, indeed, even by a president or by people who call themselves patriots, who say they defend law enforcement and police, even as they're wailing the shit out of them, beating them up and stabbing them. So these contradictions that exist in our nation are not new. And as far as River and Ryder understanding the pledge, they can understand it from no school better than from you, because we've lived it. See, that's the thing that is so surprising in a way, how we saw this insurrection or the seeds of it coming. We saw we were in a war zone, and yet the American people were almost oblivious, in massive denial. And the irony is how the same rioters who attacked the Capitol were the ones who were calling the rioters, if you will, in during the summer, the Black Lives Matter movement. They call them unpatriotic. So we have a blind side, and I think this has exposed this, not only the election, as you say, and I agree with you, it's more than the election and the inauguration, it's that even in the face of an insurrection where people were storming that very spot only 2 weeks ago, we had a peaceful transfer of power. We held the line. We almost lost it. See, that's the thing that's most chilling to me.
Yeah.
How 74 million Americans voted for that guy. I mean, despite the lies, the treason. So we have a lot of work to do to strengthen our home, to renew the alliances between black and white and rich and poor and Republican and Democrat. And that's a challenge, I think, for us. And as veterans and as Americans, I think we can do it.
How do we do it? Because you're an expert on reconciliation. You've been a part of delegations overseas. You brought people together after war. I mentioned it. You and Bobby Mueller and the crew were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for your work in Southeast Asia right after the Vietnam War and creating reconciliation. I mean, you guys stood across from people who literally killed your friends, right? And you found reconciliation and moved forward. How do we do that now as a country? How does Joe Biden do that? And how does the average American listening now help us move forward through this? Maybe reconciliation isn't even the right word, but how do we move forward as a people?
That's such a beautiful question. And again, you are the perfect kind of person to help advance that. And I am. And it takes all hands on deck. There's no longer any middle ground. There's no longer any ambiguity about the risk that we face with potentially losing our democracy, losing our lives to a pandemic that has been ignored and not addressed, losing our homes because of the incompetence of government. And so the reality is we are in a unique moment in history that I don't know has ever been compared. There's a comparable example in American life. However, as our ancestors after 1865, civil war that took more people out than indeed even the pandemic, almost 1 million of us we killed. We were able to begin the work of reconciliation and healing. That work continues. We have inherited it. It's part of our legacy, as is the need for us to produce justice for our Native American brothers and sisters, certainly for Black and white, and for all of us. We, as a people, Lincoln said it best, a house divided against itself cannot stand.
Mhm.
And we saw that. So we have been tested. We've been tested before, and it is our opportunity. And you and I, and again, this is just regular people, the
Mhm.
kinds of, nodding. I nodded to this guy, straight up redneck. Make no, I mean, just see you, and you saw me, I'm sure, as a Black guy. And I said, "How you doing, brother? Good morning." And he nodded, a little but he nodded. It's that kind of thing.
Mm.
Whereas last week, I would have stared at him, and I know he would have stared at me. We would have
Mhm.
sized each other up, hostile. So I am of a mind that we, as we've had this conversation, we have to help educate our younger brothers and sisters, our families, and other Americans in terms of civics, that we are the government. So when we attack, whether it's in St. Louis or it's Black Lives Matter or if it's the Trumpites storming the Hill, that we're attacking ourselves. And it is divided we stand. Forgive me, united we stand, divided we fall. So it's elementary. We got to make it very plain that I would much rather have Americans um, help us to clean up our environment, to help us to fix the real problems in our body politic. And let's face it, we need to have a healthy Republican Party because Democrats can do the same thing. They can abuse power, they can consolidate power and lose sight of these democratic principles. So I think we have a lot of work to do, but I am absolutely persuaded that we can do it because we have. We have, in my lifetime, I didn't think I would see a African American president, straight up, would be willing to have bet real money and lost. Then I didn't think we'd see an African American woman. So we Americans surprise each other. I also didn't think I would see a person in the White House that was incompetent and such a divisive figure, but we did, and yet we survived. So for me, it's as you say,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
This is why I call you the Oracle. I mean, there's nobody that folks who know me know I call you when something good happens. I call you when something bad happens. You have been a life coach for me. That's why me and so many others in the veterans movement have called you the Oracle. So many of us look to you for guidance. And you and I are cooking up a project, and I hope we can get a podcast by you off the ground soon. So there's a sneak preview to folks that you and I are cooking something up. And I think folks need to hear more of your voice because it's calming and it's grounding and it's thoughtful. And those are the voices that I want to elevate through Righteous Media, through my network, through everything we do. But you and I also, look below the surface and we talk about culture. We talk about parenting. We talk about music. Last night, the music, in my view, was spectacular.
wasn't it.
Democrats are really good at putting on TV, right? They're
they,
really good.
they,
It was like
yeah,
there had been a cultural tundra for 4 years, and you had Katy Perry and Garth Brooks and so many, amazing. I thought Gaga's national anthem rendition was the best I've
wasn't it?
ever heard.
Wasn't it just beautiful?
Right. But what did you think? We had the Foo Fighters. We had Springsteen. You worked with Springsteen when he was one of the first guys to step up and help Vietnam vets. But what did you think of the music last night, man? What are your thoughts on that?
Music is what brings us together again as people. It's one of these bridges, and I was deeply touched by the music. And again, different voices, different looks. And, I don't mean to take a gratuitous shot at our former president, but what did he leave us with? YMCA. I mean, that was no, I only have an undergraduate degree in psych. Yeah, but it really speaks volumes about where some people's heads are. So I think, again, the challenge for us is to help the American people, and I mean it with every fiber of my being, help the American people to remind them of how great our country already is, and truly how great we are as a people. We have some very real issues, some very sick brothers and sisters, from poverty and ignorance and lack of opportunity. And we've got to help them. And I mean that. But we also have to celebrate, as you say so well, Paul. And it's beyond me. I'm one of so many other people who simply have their point of view. They're committed, they're doing honest, good work, and they have something to say. And when we amplify those voices, I think even some of those hard-hearted um, right wingers can see the beauty and the love of our nation. So I really feel very optimistic. And I got to say, keep doing what you're doing. See, it's not about me and others, it's about you and what we can do together. So when we say we're going to work on a project that's going to help our nation, help our neighbors, that's what we want to celebrate at every front. And I'm deeply humbled for the opportunity to do it.
I love talking to you. I love being around you. I consider it one of the great honors of my life. We are still always grounded in reality, right? And this is going to be maybe the hardest winter of our lifetime. Still a hard couple of months together. We can celebrate this moment, and it's great to celebrate, but you got to stay vigilant, keep your eye on the ball, and get to work. You've been the lowest of lows. You've been, in the battlefields of Vietnam. You've been incarcerated. You've helped other people change their lives. You have been to the really dark places, and a lot of folks are going to be in really dark places in the next couple of weeks. Is there insight or wisdom that you can share now that they can hold on to in the next couple of weeks or months to get through into the spring that's on the other side?
I, I, I wish I did. Unfortunately, I don't. All I have is the real simple tools of life, and that is to say that there, but for the grace of God, go I. I mean, I really could be one of those 400,000 that we honored last night who died, many unnecessarily from COVID. I could have been one of the three Wayne Smiths on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial who were killed in action, who haven't lived their lives as I have been able to do. So many of us, again, when we remind ourselves simply of how fortunate we are, then we want to be supportive. We want to reach out to some of our friends that we've not spoken to in a while and just let them know we care. And I know for me, when you say to me, "Hey, Wayne, I really love you," man, that just makes it melts, really, it does. And when I think of your wife, beautiful Lauren, and your sons and your mother, I mean, there is that kind of feeling that all of us really want. So it's on us to reach out to one another, to be helpful to one another. And you're right. These next couple of months may well be the most significant, the most challenging in terms of public health in American history, which is chilling just to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But to say it, to know it, you are doing the preparation, Paul. You are educating us, you're preparing us. So we need your forum. We need to be able to check in with you and to hear from the many people who surround you, and yourself included, in terms of how we're going to not only get through the long haul, just today.
Mm.
And you've helped make my day so much better. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to share it.
Mm.
And that's what, so it's infectious. And it is a matter of, it is our culture as Americans that we all believe, and we're kind of unique. Many people in other countries, they don't think like we do in this one way. Americans think tomorrow can be a better day.
Mm.
And it's absolutely fascinating, whereas so many of the other parts of the world do not. So with that, we want to stay true to our optimism. We want to be reminded that our ancestors who didn't have access to the tools and expertise and knowledge, but they endured.
Mm.
and we are their children and their grandchildren and their grandchildren. And because of you and Lauren, River and Ryder, they're going to grow up optimistic. They're going to learn the Declaration and the Bill of Rights and embrace it. And that's what we have to do with others. So I am, like you, standing with you and asking other Americans to stand with us and simply do the right thing by one another. And when we do, we really will have the kind of gift to the future generations, and they will read about us. And I said, yeah, there was this guy, Paul Rieckhoff, back there. He was angry, but he was out there educating us. Seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. That's what happens. We think about Thomas Paine and these other people that history often forgets, but they made small contributions that lit a fire and gave us hope. And that fire continues. So
that's why I wanted you. That's why I wanted you on now, because you stoke those good fires. You bring that good light. You make that good trouble. You are an example of the optimism and the best, the grit and toughness and demand for accountability that represents the best of this country. So I thought to myself, who do we need to hear from now? And it's you. It's Wayne Smith. It's the Oracle. I'm so glad you joined me again. I hope you come back soon. Folks, stay tuned for more, because we're going to try to bring you more of that feeling you got listening to Wayne Smith today. We're going to bring more of that tomorrow and the days to come. Stay tuned for more. Follow Wayne on Twitter, and I will continue to share his voice. But we are grateful for you. You are the Oracle. Thank you for all you do and all the love you spread, my friend.
I am very humbled to have your friendship, and thank you, and blessings to your listening audience.
Blessings
We're in this
to everybody.
together.
The great and
Blessings
powerful Wayne
to
Smith, everybody.
the Oz. Bless you, brother.
Stay frosty, man. Stay vigilant.
Thank you.